It's now recording.
Okay, welcome everybody.
We'll be there in the comments.
We're recording the session. The reason I'm doing it is I will put this as a private link on YouTube. I'll put that onto the website for this trip, and it's just going to be there. Okay, so it's not going public. If you need to go, then please just go. Okay. I'll try and keep this to about 45 minutes. And the information I'm going to give here is actually more for parents. Most of the information is for parents. However, you can relay it to them, but that's also why I'm recording it, so your parents can watch it as well, because it gives some of the sort of health and safety and technical aspects of the trip. So I'll talk to you a bit about what the trip involves, and then at the end I'll talk about what the kind of requirements are for signing up, and then how to sign up. Okay. So we've run this trip for a number of years now. The first trip was in 2016. And we didn't run it for 2 years during COVID. So I think this will be the 6th or 7th. I think the 7th time the trip was run. So it runs from the 15th of June until the 26th of June. So 15th I think is a Saturday. So it's the first Saturday of the summer holidays. We'll depart Schiphol Airport in the morning, and then on the 25th of June we leave Johannesburg Airport and we get in to Schiphol on the morning of the 26th of June. So it's a total of, that is a total of 11 nights, one of which is going to be on a plane. Okay, the video I was showing you was a video about African conservation experience. Not everything in that video is involved in this trip, but it gives you a bit of an understanding what the sort of the general environment is like. The trip is being run by African Conservation Experience. There is a change to kind of what you could call the sort of responsibility of the trip this year. From this year onwards, this is not an ISA trip. As it has been in the past. What that means is that the school does not have any kind of connection to the trip other than allowing me to promote it and for ISA students to go on the trip. So everything is being operated through African Conservation Experience. Now I'll tell you a bit about the history of African Conservation Experience. It was started in 1999 through my family. So I was born and for the first few years of my life lived in South Africa. When I finished school, so like in a year's time for you, I really wanted to go and do some work in the Kruger National Park in South Africa before starting university. And through like a friend of my father's, we organized it that I got to spend 2 months working in a kind of conservation management team in the Kruger Park. It was great and I enjoyed it. And at the time, my parents were kind of looking to set up, or sort of through their experience of helping me with this, and a number of other people saying to them, well, can you help us out with this? They decided that they wanted to set up a program that allowed people, predominantly at the time it was from the UK, to go and work on wildlife conservation projects in South Africa. So they started organizing that with various conservation groups that we knew in the country. I was kind of involved in the background. Of course, I was just starting university. I built the first website in 2001, which was just a simple page with a phone number on it. But as it's grown and grown and grown. At this point now, my parents are not involved anymore, and my wife and I basically run the whole organization. We have a team based in Bristol in the UK. We work from here, and we have a team based on the ground in South Africa. And we specialize in providing education conservation experiences for school and college groups, but as well as for individuals. Most of the people that travel with us are individual people or couples or families, but we also organize for many schools around the world to do trips like this each year. What we stand for is high levels of responsibility and service. So we're one of the only organisations of our kind that is a member of APTA, which is the Association of British Travel Agencies. You can go on their website and see what that stands for, but it basically means that in terms of health and safety, financial management, we uphold sort of a high standard. we're not just a sort of a travel organization. Most of the projects we work with, we have established. We don't own the projects, they're owned by the people on the ground, but we help them establish those conservation projects, and sometimes we give them financial support, but a lot of it is advice of how to run the projects. We've got very strong ethical and moral foundations. So for example, one example is we don't allow any human-animal contact at any of our projects unless that is necessary and of direct benefit to the animal. So for example, we don't allow people petting animals or taking animals for a walk or things like that unless it is required for that animal. Okay, so that's an African conservation experience. I'll talk a little bit about the actual trip. So we would get a direct flight from Amsterdam Schiphol down to Johannesburg, which is just south of Pretoria here. It's about a 12-hour flight. We would arrive on the Saturday evening. And then we would drive down to this region here. This is the Kruger National Park. So just showing you a photo of the type of buses that we use. They are similar to what you would get in the Netherlands. People think that because they're going to Africa, they're going to go on this big old rundown bus. These are modern, reliable buses with professional drivers. This is a photo taken just a few months ago. You might recognize some of the grade 12 people in there. So this is kind of a communal area of the camp. So you're camping inside a private area of the Kruger National Park. So the Kruger National Park is a big game reserve, and it's huge. It takes many hours to drive across it. A large part of that is public. That means that tourists can pay to go in and drive around and view the animals. Parts of it are private, which means that they're privately owned, and they're big. They're the size of huge farms. Some of them are used, so this is like a research area, and so we have this camp that's based there. Tourists cannot go there. When you're there, you might see a few other people, but not really tourists. You can see in this photo, there's a kitchen here and a dining area. There's this, which is linked up to a solar panel where they can charge laptops and other devices and run the fridge. This is what the accommodation looks like. So you'd stay in these safari tents. There's normally 2 people, so boys sharing with boys, girls sharing with girls in a tent. There is a swimming pool at this particular camp. It is small, but it is there. You can see, so you will sleep on a bed. It's not just, it is a tent, but it's a tent that you can stand up inside, and there are beds. Okay. So what will you do when you're there? So there's a number of different things. It's all about experiential learning about wildlife conservation and the environment. This isn't just a trip for biology students. We have many people each year that don't study biology or ESS, who the trip is interesting for and relevant. Some of what we'll do is driving sort of transects, so driving routes through the research area, collecting data on the animals that you see. The area that we work in has only been opened up to the full Kruger National Park for about 5 years. It used to be a reserve on its own, but it was fenced off. So a lot of the big animals like lions and elephants and rhinos weren't there. Now that those fences have been removed and it's connected to the whole Kruger National Park, a lot of those animals are starting to move into this area. So we're doing research about how the numbers of those different animals are changing over the years. If you're interested, then some of the data that we collect, so this is things like locations of a buffalo herd. How many are there? How many males? How many females? What are the age groups? A lot of that data we'll collect in big spreadsheets, and if you want to, you can use that as part of your IAs for biology. If you want to use them for ESS, then you can do. These are just photos that students have taken on previous years. So you can see, you can record data. This is a bit old-fashioned, the GPS. Now you can use the GPS on your phone, and we record the data in a laptop. You'll do a certain amount of walking. So this is one of my favorite things, walking through the bush, because although you tend not to see as many of the big animals, the lions and the elephants, because they're scared of you when you're on foot. They're not scared of you when you're in a vehicle, because they don't see you as a person. But when you're on foot, you just see a lot of other things that you don't see when you're on a vehicle. So a lot of smaller animals, insects and birds. And the guides, teach you about everything as you're walking. So in this case, this is a buffalo, I think, that was killed by a lion a number of months previously. These are more photos again, just to give you some context of the sorts of things that you might see when you're there. And this is walking. When you walk very slowly. So it doesn't require a high level of fitness. You need to be able to walk a few kilometers. But when we're walking, we're not going to be walking, many kilometers in the sun. It's not like the Duke of Edinburgh experience. So as long as you can walk a few kilometers in a pair of trainers, you'll be fine. You tend to walk quite slowly because you're listening to what's happening around you and listening out for the guide. We'll set up camera traps. So these are cameras that take a photo, often at night when an animal walks past, and we use this again to collect data about what animals you see, because you see a lot of animals in these, like aardvarks, that you wouldn't see normally when you're walking or in a vehicle. Okay, so you will spend, it's 9 nights in the Kruger Park. During that time, you're also going to visit a community project that we work with. The exact project that we do varies because we work with them for many different school groups. What we don't do is we're not going to teach the children because none of you are qualified teachers. So in the same way, you wouldn't have somebody from Africa come here and teach you without being a qualified teacher. The same, we don't do the same there. But what we will do is help the people at this community project with things like gardening, building, infrastructure, and that sort of thing. That's only going to be 1 day. You'd also visit an animal rehabilitation center to see how animals that have been injured in the wild or go into rehabilitation centers and hopefully get rehabilitated and released. So after being there for 9 days, we'll then drive back up to the Johannesburg and you'll spend a night and then a full day in Johannesburg. The idea is for you, it would be a shame to go all the way to South Africa and not see Johannesburg because it's such an interesting city, is for you to learn about the political and social history of South Africa. And so a lot of people that do ESS or global politics have done extended essays or IAs on interviews that they've done with people in Johannesburg. So Johannesburg has a huge diversity in wealth, from people living in shacks to people living in huge mansions. We'll visit the Apartheid Museum. So for those of you that don't know, up until the mid-90s, the political system in South Africa meant that white people and non-white people had different laws applying for them. Even still now, white people only make up a small percentage of the population but own most of the wealth. So it's a lot of the way that wildlife is conserved, you need to understand in the context of the political history of South Africa. So we go to a museum where you learn about that. Who knows of Nelson Mandela? I'm always interested to know. About half of you, okay. Ever since I've been a teacher, I ask each year, and the number of people's going down, down, down. Nelson Mandela was an important person in the bringing about of democracy in South Africa, so allowing non-white people to vote. Okay, and you'll visit his house or where he lived when he was young in Soweto. I'm not going to go into the details of it, but we do a number of each year have some students that do extended essays or their internal assessments on information or data that they collect on this trip. For example, these are some research questions. How does the density of vegetation affect the distribution of predators, grazers and browsers in the Greater Kruger National Park? Is there an association between the locations of impala and giraffe in the Greater Kruger National Park? An extended essay, to what extent can use of technology offer improvements in estimates of biodiversity? And you can get advice from your teacher or from me about how you can use the data that you collect here if you want to link it to your studies. A lot of people also use this as their CAS project. Okay. I'll just have a quick, questions.
Would it work for our DOE residential project?
Yes. As far as I know, it does. Do you know what, does it have to be a minimum length?
5 days.
5 days.
Okay, yeah. So just check
It should be.
with the DOE coordinators,
Yeah.
but as far as I know in the past, people have used it for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So I'm going to move on to now about some health and safety and how to sign up. But does anybody have any questions about what you'll be doing on the actual trip? Yes.
I did look a bit into like the African conservation experience
Yeah.
before, and I know that there are specific projects and looking at specific animals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are we kind of doing a specific one or going around?
No. Okay. So African Conservation Experience has projects for mainly individuals where you can work just in an animal rehabilitation centre, or work just with a wildlife vet, or work just with a sort of animal behavioural research group. This is a kind of a bit of all of those, but mostly focused around learning about the ecosystem of the Kruger Park and spending time there. This suits school groups the best. If we all went and spent a whole week working in an animal rehabilitation centre, there would probably only be 5 of you that really enjoyed doing that for a whole week. Yeah, so you get to see the animal rehabilitation centre, you might get to see some of the work that the vets do, but this works better for school groups. Okay. If anybody's interested, you can go to our website and see all those other projects and go and do those yourself or with your family if you like. Any other questions about what the actual trip involves? Okay. This is just to show you, these are a number of like the schools and colleges that are traveling with us in either 2023 and or 2024. So you can see we work with a number of different international schools and colleges. Yeah.
So would we be with other like students?
Okay, good question. You will be with your group and not combined with any other groups.
Okay.
Yeah. So that whole research camp and that area is kind of exclusive for you if you're on this trip.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. You probably can't read that. I'll just go over. So this is health, safety, and support. Okay. So first of all, one thing that isn't mentioned on here is safeguarding. Safeguarding is protection of you as minors against abuse. You will always be in the presence of one of the chaperones that will be on the trip. You'll never be left alone. And when I say chaperones, again, this is not a trip being run by ISA, and there will be 2 chaperones, so those are 2 teachers, but those 2 teachers will be going on the trip but not representing the school. Yeah, they will be there to represent African Conservation Experience, but they'll be people that you probably recognize from the school. We're not sure exactly who that is, we just want to see how many students are on the trip before we decide, but there'll be a male and a female chaperone. You stay in a tent, normally with 1 or 2 other people, and you will, the chaperones will be near you, but you won't be sharing accommodation with them. And then the people, the rangers that run the project on the ground, they have a separate accommodation somewhere else. Okay, in terms of location, so it says the camp is located 30 minutes from Hoedspruit, where there are sort of GPs, doctors that can help with most day-to-day injuries, so a sprained ankle or a cut or something like that, or somebody with a bad stomach. If necessary, it's a 1 hour, 40-minute drive from Sanin, which is a town with a Mediclinic, and that has a private medical clinic which would be covered by your insurance if something serious happened, like a really serious injury, probably even a broken leg or poisoning or something like that. We've never needed to use this, but we do know where that place is if necessary. And it's of the standard of what you'd expect if you went to a medical clinic in the Netherlands. The vehicles, as I mentioned earlier, are of a high standard. They're of the same level standards as what you'd expect in the Netherlands. So African Conservation Experience, we use a risk assessment protocol to risk assess the projects, but most importantly the transfers, how we get you from one place to another, because that's where the biggest risk lies. Okay, so we've got strict health and safety guidelines. There is a team, so African Conservation Experience has a team of people based in Johannesburg. These are not the rangers that are running the projects on the ground. This is a team that's there to support you as the group traveling. Okay, so if there were an issue, and somebody, I don't know, needed to get back to Johannesburg because they need to be flown home or something like that, that team would be available to facilitate that. So there's a strong level of support in country. This isn't just you going with an ISA teacher, into South Africa. You've got to support this team there. Okay, African Conservation Experience is a UK-based travel provider. Okay, that has a legal status, which means that they've got public liability insurance, and they're covered by what's called the UK Package Travel Regulations. These are laws, standards that mean that, for example, if there's a COVID breakout, okay, and the country's going into lockdown, that African Conservation Experience has a responsibility to you to either get you out of the country or make sure that you comply to the regulations or whatever needs to happen. But we can't just leave you there, okay? We have a responsibility until the moment you get back home. Okay, the trip will be financially protected through ATOL. That means that any money you pay for the trip is financially protected. If, like, for example, you pay for the trip and African Conservation Experience stops operating, which is unlikely to happen, but if it were to happen, your money is protected and you get a full refund. If you're out in South Africa and something happens, for example, there's a COVID lockdown, or a civil war breaks out, then your money is protected to make sure that you get back to the Netherlands. I don't know if anybody has any questions. This is about health, safety, and support.
Is there any specific vaccination required or not?
Good question. Okay, so medical requirements. And I'll come to it in a minute, what you will need to do is go to a medical clinic as if you were going on holiday to get checked what vaccinations we'd need. We can't legally provide any advice on vaccinations. South Africa doesn't require any specific vaccinations, but there are some that the travel clinic may recommend for you. So you do need to, like KLM, have a travel clinic. You can book an appointment there. You say where you're going, and you say exactly where you're going and what time of the year you're going, and they will have a look at what vaccinations you've had. In most cases, students who go from ISA, it's just vaccinations that they would normally need anywhere they were going on holiday, that they just need a booster for. The big divider is malaria tablets. And the difficulty is the location where you're going is considered at some times of the year to be on the border of a malaria zone. Some people are advised to take malaria tablets. Some people are advised not to take malaria tablets. When I go myself, I don't take malaria tablets. But you need to go to to the travel clinic, and you can discuss that with them. Any other questions for health and safety? Okay, right. So if you're interested, I just want to check: is it still recording? Yeah. Because this is important for parents now who want to sign up. Okay, so. Why is it not? It's frozen. Okay. So the cost for the trip, which I think was in the update, right, is €3,500. Last year it was 3,400, so based on the price. That really includes everything. The only extra money are the costs to go to the travel medical clinic, and I'll speak about it in a minute, but you'll need to get an affidavit, that's a legal document, from your parents giving you permission to travel to South Africa if you're under the age of 18 when you travel. And so if there's any of those costs, those are not covered. But it includes the full trip, the return flights with KLM to Johannesburg, all your transport, meals and accommodation. We can accommodate pretty much any dietary requirement we've ever been asked for. the full logistical support before and after, and there's that 24-hour emergency support in South Africa. Now, if you're interested, your parents need to sign you up. You can't do it yourself. I don't know, some of you open this link. If you go to that, it will take you to a sign-up page. So, and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, the sign-up page is a little bit legalistic. So, again, this is what your parents need to fill out. If you're under the age of 18, if you're 18, you can fill it out yourself. So there's two things you need to do to sign up for the trip. Your parents need to fill this out, and they need to pay a €1,000 deposit. That's so we can book the flights. There's details here of the bank accounts. You can either pay by doing a bank transfer. This is an account in the UK, but it is a euro account. So please make sure if you do a transfer that it is in euros. If you want to pay by debit or credit card, send an email to this address or call. I see this number is wrong. I'm going to correct it now. Before I forget, that is in the UK, so that's a +44. Okay. Okay, so you can call that number if you want to pay by debit or credit card. And then we just need details like your name. So again, this is all addressed to your parents. So when they see it, this is their name, their email address. They need to put in your name, your Dutch medical insurance, which would cover you if you need medical support in South Africa. So we need your medical details there. If you've got any allergies, we need to know those, or any medical concerns, because we just need to check that you're able to do the trip. And then your passport details so that we can book the flights. You get a t-shirt, so you put in your t-shirt size. That's all straightforward. The next is easy, but they are important requirements. Okay, so there's a number of things that your parents are going to show here that they understand. So they're going to pay the €1,000 deposit, and then it says, I'll just make it bigger. Okay. So I'm saying this also so anybody watching the video can understand it. So this is just saying that you'll pay the initial deposit, that you'll also pay the remaining balance, $2,500 by the 7th of April. We need that to pay for all the other services and transport and accommodation in South Africa. It says, I'll ensure my son-daughter visits a travel medical clinic for advice about vaccinations and malaria medication. It says my son or daughter will have a passport valid until at least the 27th of September 2024. It needs to be valid for at least 3 months after the last day of the trip. That's a requirement to get into South Africa. It needs to have at least 1 pair of unmarked facing pages. I know it sounds technical, but what we can't have is that we're trying to get in as a group and one person has only 1 empty page in their passport and we can't get in as a whole group. So that's why we're just making sure that everybody's aware of all of these. You may need a visa. Once we've got everybody's passports, we'll look to see who needs a visa. Most nationalities at ISA can enter South Africa without a visa. If you're okay with it, then any photos that we take, we would like to be able to use in videos like what I've just shown you, or photos to promote future trips. You don't have to tick that if you don't want to. There are terms and conditions. So your parents need to click on the terms and conditions and just read through in terms of the booking, behavioural expectations, all those sorts of things. So this is an important thing. By travelling on the trip, you are travelling under the terms and conditions of African Conservation Experience. That's different to previous trips where the school agreed to those terms and conditions. Okay. Your parents are ticking a box to say they understand the trip is run by African Conservation Experience, not ISA. And then the last one is that your parents understand that if you're going to be under the age of 18 at the beginning of the trip, they need to provide a certified affidavit. Okay, so that means you do need to go to a solicitor, and it's just a letter saying that both your parents give permission for you to travel to South Africa. This is security from South Africa's side to make sure that people are not being trafficked across the border. Okay, it will require copies of your unabridged birth certificate and parents' passports of your parents or legal guardian. Hi, sorry. Okay. So these are important. Please make sure that your parent doesn't just go tick, 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 that they read those things carefully, because they are kind of like committed, making a few commitments. Okay, I'll leave that there, and I'll see if anybody has any questions. Yes?
Yeah, I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
How many people will stay in one tent?
It's either going to be 2 or 3.
And
But actually, yeah, and that second question?
is there like a curfew per night to be in the tent?
To be honest, what we normally find is that people are really tired at the end of the day. And people go to bed quite early, because it gets dark at about 6, because you're going to be there in the middle of the winter, South African winter. So in the middle of the day, it's going to be maybe 22, 23 degrees, probably blue skies and quite nice. At night it cools down, and most people go to bed at about 8, 9 o'clock, and you normally get up at about 5 or 6 o'clock. It's just your whole day is shifted earlier because you're awake when the sun is up. But what most people find is your body just goes into this natural rhythm where you want to go to bed because it's getting dark and cold, and then in the morning it gets pretty noisy in the bush. You start hearing animals. You probably hear lions roaring and hyenas, and that wakes you up in the morning.
But imagine you wake up and I dare them.
Another interesting. So you asked a question about the number of people. There's at the moment the limit for the trip is 18 students that will be on the trip. To be honest, in most cases, I don't think we've ever had to turn anybody away for the ISA trip, so it's probably not an issue, but it would come down to a first come, first served basis for signing up. And bear in mind, the sign up requires the form plus the payment of the deposit. Yes?
I got 2 questions.
Yeah.
So first, I have 2 questions. First question is, what's the ideal time to sleep?
Well, for your age, it would be about 9 hours a night.
9 hours.
And to be honest, people sleep really well there. You're not going to have Wi-Fi or internet access, so you're not going to be on your phone late. We're not going to stop you. We're not going to stop you using your phone, but you're only going to be able to do on your phone what you can do without internet access. You had a second question?
My second question was asking about the Wi-Fi.
Okay. Yes.
Is there cellular data?
Is there what?
Like data?
No. No. Yes. Yeah. Guys, sorry, I need to hear the question.
So you just mentioned that it's exciting and wonderful to see the lions and all, but tent accommodations, are they on the ground? Like, is there a risk that these animals can come into the camp? Or I know my friends have gone. I've never been.
Yeah.
Where they stay up in the trees and things, but I just didn't know how that works.
Yeah, so the tents are on the ground. It's a concrete base that's built, and the tents are put on the concrete base. The camp has most camps don't have anything, and occasionally animals do walk through the tent at night, through the camp at night. But they normally only do that if there's no people there. The animals are pretty scared of people, and there's never. I mean, in terms of African conservation experience, we've all done trips for tens of thousands of people. We've never had an issue with the animals. Yeah.
So if that happens, like, how do you deal with that? Are the students prepped on if a lion comes close, what to do, or who to call, or
Yeah. So the rangers, the people are within shouting distance.
Okay.
So you can shout if there is an animal.
Thank you.
And again, we have had it. I've been on trips, not at this camp, but at other camps we've stayed at, where you'll wake up in the morning and the lions, you can see the the footprints of a lion has come through the camp at night.
Not a marker.
But normally that would probably only have happened because everybody was asleep. But if as soon as somebody's rustling around, moving a tent, any animal's going to move off. Sophia?
If we don't have internet, how can we get contact our parents? I think just like always have right now.
Okay, so the guides there, they do have access through. I'm just trying to remember this camp. I think it might be through satellite access that they can, and also the chaperones will be there. Will be able to have WhatsApp access to the parents. So all the communication goes through that. Yes.
Will there be like
Just by
will there be like a net to like secure like the condition where there's like no insects and stuff?
Okay, yeah, good question about insects. So you're going to be going in the middle of the winter, but the most important thing is it's the dry season. And it gets pretty cold at night. So you don't actually see many insects around. If you were to go in the summer, it would be really different. But because you go at night, there's very few mosquitoes around, and there's just very few insects. So people don't have a problem of getting bitten or anything. You get far more bitten being out in the summer in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
You will do that. Yeah.
What's the general like climate during the day? It happens. I didn't know. 22, 23.
Yeah. Yes.
22 degrees.
Okay. It's nice. It does get cool at night though. Good. Okay, can you listen to the questions, please? Yes.
Just kind of for my own reference, if I want to go myself in the future, if comparing the price of this trip versus if we were to sign up on our own as like maybe an individual with our families, what would the like difference in cost be?
Okay, it's similar. It would probably be a bit cheaper if you went yourself. And the reason for that is with this, there are costs with the chaperones that are going, to sort of to chaperone the trip. But the difference would be a couple of €100. But if you wanted to go and do it on your own, then you can say I want to go to this project for 2 weeks, this project for 2 weeks. So you can build your trip for how you want to do it, or you could go with your family. Yeah. Yes.
How do you wash your clothes?
Just a good question. There is a service where once a week where you can get your clothes washed in the middle of the week. But bear in mind, you most of the time you're going to be in shorts and t-shirt. You're not going to get really hot, so you're not going to be sweating. But what most people do is bring like 3 or 4 t-shirts, 3 or 4 pairs of shorts, and a couple of pairs of trousers. Because it's going to be 9 nights. Yeah. And if you need to get, 9 pairs of underwear. Yeah. But we'll send, a couple of months before we go, we'll provide you with a list. You do not, it's, in most cases, there's nothing you need to buy to go on the trip. So it's not like Duke of Edinburgh, you don't need a specialist rucksack, sleeping bag, or hiking boots. Okay? You don't need any specialist equipment. Any other questions? Yeah.
What's like the showering situation?
There's like an area, so it's a private shower, but it is open, so it's kind of a barrier thing, like a wooden barrier with a shower block that is, I'm just trying to get this right, and I've never, this actual camp that we'll be going to next year, I've not been to before. I've been to many equivalent camps. I think that this one, it's heated by, you have like a fire underneath the big container and they heat up water, and then there's a big high up water tank, and that gives the water pressure, and then the water gets heated up, it goes to the shower. So you get a warm shower, which is nice, because in the mornings or the afternoons it can be cold. But it is and it's an open air shower, but it is private. So an area, for you to get changed and go in the shower and come out. Any other questions?
What about water?
Sorry?
Is the water, what do you do with drinking water?
At this camp, so they bring with them bottles of bottled drinking water.
Okay.
Yeah, so so the water for showering comes from a borehole that's pumped up, but like from an underground aquifer. But the drinking water is brought in bottles separately. Okay, so what I'll do is I will put this recording. So if you're interested again, on the sign-up sheet, there is a link to, I think it's on the first page, to the website where you can get the details. If you don't, so the best thing you can do if you're interested is you go to that link, which takes to the sign-up sheet. Send that as an email with that link to your parents. But what I'll also do is on the Friday newsletters from the school, I'll get it so that on coming Friday's newsletter there's a link in there that your parents can click on to sign you up. Okay, thanks everyone.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, yes.